Good evening to our couples out there planning a wedding, and a very happy National Wedding Planning Day to you all. The Knot has declared March 1st is the official start of the wedding planning season, since a whopping 40% of engagements go down between November and February. So on behalf of Complete Nation, congrats from us to you. Please visit us at completewedo.com to learn how we can make your day awesome, and remember that you plus us equals better together. We're here from all over to give you some quick advice as you move towards the perfect wedding day. So let's meet the panel of experts that Complete Weddings and Events has assembled to tackle the questions on your mind. So up first, we have Tara Grubb live from Manhattan, Kansas, the Little Apple, to talk about all things planning.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
You bet. Live from Central Illinois, we have Music Man extraordinaire Jordan Sweet.
What's up, guys? Thanks for having us, Josh.
You bet. Shout out to our expert behind the lens, here to showcase her photographic knowledge. Please welcome Ari Reynolds from the Twin Cities.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. And we have our couple advocating service specialist, Libby Venable, joining us from the Lou, and she's proud.
Guys.
And finally, coming here from Milwaukee, aka the Good Land, my wife and details guru, Misty Kingsley.
Hi there.
And I'm your host, Josh Kingsley, and we're going to get right to work. So this is all about planning. So Tara, we'll start with you. Can you give our couples some tips for working with your wedding vendors?
Absolutely. Well, that first vendor I would definitely suggest is hiring a wedding planner. They can really streamline that process when working with your vendors. We review contracts all the time. We work with these vendors on a regular basis. And so we have an idea of what their ins and outs are of their operations. We try not to quote any pricing, but we have some good idea of what a range of pricing might be. So it can sometimes streamline that process where you don't have to go to each vendor and ask every detailed question. We know everything from what type of tables and chairs the venues may have, as well as what time the florist likes to arrive before the big day, what time it's best for the cake to be there before the reception begins. And so a planner can definitely streamline that process and be your liaison between your vendors and you, and allow for you to do some of the communication with them with just our guidance along the way as well. And so it's really ideal to have the communication with your vendor up front about everything that you need and want and your budget, but then we can come in and really handle all of those little details that the vendors may have questions about.
Perfect. Libby, I'm going to go to you next, and I want to really lean into this budget piece. When we're talking about the budget, how do you go about recommending to couples? Do you splurge or do you save?
So when I'm talking to my couples, I typically tell them to pick their top 3 to 5 things that they want to spend the most money on. Splurge there, go crazy, spend what you want, get what you want. And then the rest of the items for your wedding, I recommend that's where you find your savings. Maybe cut stuff out or go with the less expensive option. The top things that I normally, when talking to my brides, recommend is the venue. I always recommend a beautiful venue because it is a backdrop to your photos and your videos. So hiring an amazing photographer and videographer is crucial, but we want to make sure the backdrop and the venue itself is really beautiful as well. And then photography, videography, entertainment. And for me, I'm a foodie, so I say spend money on food. But those are my top 5 that normally when I'm talking with my brides and grooms, I say venue, photo, video, DJ, food, splurge, spend your money, get exactly what you want, hire a good professional team. And then the other places like favors and stuff, maybe on your alcohol, find a little bit of savings and just budget from there.
All right, sounds good. That's good stuff. Misty, I'm going to fly to you next. And the question that I have for you is the wedding website. When you're putting the plans together, how necessary is it to have the wedding website when you're communicating with your guests?
I think it's absolutely necessary. We all know how we operate these days. You're going out of town for a wedding, you're, running late, even if it's in town, and you don't bring the invitation. If there's a physical invitation, where are we going? You're trying to look it up in the car. So if you've got a wedding website, it's really great for the day of to really help people remember where they need to be, address for the church, all of those great things. As you're leading up to the day, though, it can be a useful tool if you've got a lot of people coming in from out of town, suggestions for where they should stay, what they should do while they're in town, any other events you might be hosting, if you're kind of opening up the rehearsal dinner to more than just your wedding party, or drinks after the rehearsal dinners for everybody. So I think it's essential to have a wedding website, even if it just has basic information on it. You can get as in-depth as you want, but it is an essential tool.
So the more you know, the more you know. Good stuff there. Ari, we're going to go to you next, and we're going to talk specifically about photography. And let's get into the question that gets asked a lot. Should one photographer get everything done, or is there a need to have two photographers, and kind of talk about what you get by having a second photographer?
Yeah, so typically what I say would be my number one go-to is there's 3 times you have to, hands down, no matter what, have a second photographer. That is, if you are at a Catholic wedding and there's limited mobility, like a venue that's just got a lot of space to it where it's hard to get around for one photographer, it's helpful for one to be up front getting the action and the second to be getting some of those more just atmosphere photos. So that's the first reason. Number 2, if you are not doing a first look. So this is completely an optional thing. Years ago, first looks were not a thing. You saw each other as you walked down the aisle. So when I say first look, I mean, it's a separate time during the day before your wedding ceremony that you get to see your groom. If you are not doing that very small, intimate moment, you're going to want to have a second photographer, because there's one important moment that happens during your ceremony, and it's the bride walking down the aisle and the look on his face. So it's like, kind of, we can't be in 2 places at once. We need to have 2 people there. So that's kind of where we do that. If you're not doing that first look, it's also really important, because after your ceremony, you're jumping straight into family photos, and we're wrangling and we're trying to pull people and we're posing. And that second photographer is either there helping read off that shot list, or they're there to kind of get some of that stuff that the bride and groom are missing during cocktail hour, because it's just that candid, fun stuff that everybody wants to be a part of that they may not be able to. So
that's perfect. I actually want to follow up with you and pry a little bit more on the first look, since you did bring that up. One of the questions that comes up are, when you're putting together a first look, how do you actually stage that? Are you just leaving it to your photographer, or do you come in with ideas, and what are the things to think about?
I would say a majority of the time, my bride has no idea where to do this. There's actually 2 types of first looks. A lot of brides ask to do a first look with their dad and then a first look with their groom. Personally, I tend to do these at the exact same time. So as you're walking out to see your groom, maybe there's a pretty tree on our way down that path that we can have dad first. You get that moment with your dad and he gives you a hug. And it's kind of the same thing of him giving you away at your wedding, where he gets to let your hand go and walk you down to your future husband. So that's kind of the nice layout if you do a dad first look and a groom first look. As far as where to do these, typically I like to make this an intimate moment. So I don't want this to be where your entire bridal party is gawking at you guys and videotaping. I want this to be very like, this is the same intimate moment that you would have at the altar, except for you get to actually talk to each other, touch each other, you can hug. So as a photographer, I want this moment to be very candid. So getting photographer input is really important. Just if they're walking up there, I want to be able to get his face, her face, and get the whole wide angle shot without being like, hey, stop right there. I want this to be, when you're done with your moment, let me know and I will, we can go on to posing. So it's just a nice intimate moment between the bride and groom. Position, get your photographer input. They'll always help out.
Perfect. All right, Jordan, let's go to you next. We've had all the ladies go first. So my question to you is, talk about DJ service a little bit. And obviously everybody knows that the DJ is going to be playing music. Is there anything else the DJ should be doing throughout the day?
Yeah, absolutely. And, with Complete, we definitely try to be more than just an iPod. I tell all the couples that I talk to, I don't think you guys should spend a ton of money on someone just to show up and be that iPod for you. In this day and age, we can definitely build playlists, or you can build playlists as a couple and be able to show up and play that. But what you really pay for in a DJ is that MC and host and someone to kind of coordinate the events and keep a nice pace to it. So your DJ is, really valuable for what they do outside of the booth. Early in the day, that could be helping you guys get lined up for the ceremony itself. It could be helping you get lined up again for the introductions for the reception. I know with COVID and everything going on, a lot of times people are doing like private residences or smaller backyard weddings. You need someone to like release your tables. Those kind of things that we don't always think about, a DJ can help out so much with. And I think every event needs a leader. It needs somebody kind of in charge that people can look to. And that's where your DJ is going to come in and going to be super valuable for keeping a nice pace to the night so that your guests, are fresh, they're ready to dance. The last thing we want is at 8 o'clock, your guests feeling like it's midnight. So that DJ pacing is so huge for making your event a success.
All right, perfect. And Tara, we're going to go back to you. And Jordan gave you a nice layup to get right into the backyard wedding. As couples are thinking about ways to get around COVID restrictions or to have control over their event, the backyard wedding seems to be a pretty big trend that we're noticing all over the country. So what are your recommendations for a couple thinking about the backdoor wedding as a way to, or the backyard wedding to put together their day?
Yeah, absolutely. Backyard weddings can definitely be tricky. So I always encourage brides and grooms to not just jump right in and say, I'm doing a backyard wedding. You really have to think through the location, obviously. Does that location give you ample space to host a ceremony reception? But does it also give you space for parking? Does it give you space for bathrooms? And we're not always talking about porta potties. And if you're going that route, you also have to have a wash station. And so there's definitely a lot of logistical things. Are you bringing in a tent? And if you are, you have to know where can you dig and put those tent poles in your yard. You also may need to really think about all the extra things that you may need that a venue usually provides, like your tables, chairs, and linens, which can definitely add up, as well as lighting. It's going to get dark, and if you don't have ample lighting, your dance floor lighting is only going to do so much. You need lighting for your cake table and your bar area, besides just the dance floor, and so that lighting can sometimes cause an issue. We also always want to encourage our brides to make sure they have ample power. Obviously, you want to bring a DJ. A DJ is going to take power. Running a generator can be very loud, so you want to make sure that you really think about the logistics of where that is. Overall, the biggest thing when it comes to a backyard wedding, though, is the weather. You can unfortunately, especially where I'm at in Kansas, we have about maybe 2-3 months of perfect weather. And even then, it's kind of a crapshoot. So you definitely have to know when you're planning that big day that the weather is going to be trending to be a good month to have it, but have backup plans. Have backup plans for where people may have to park, where people will, how they have to get from point A to point B if they're getting from their car to a tent. Like you thought about the tent being great for the rain, but that path from the parking to the tent may be a complete muddy mess. And so definitely the weather can have a big factor in that backyard wedding being amazing. Hiring a wedding planner to take care of all those logistics is definitely key because there's a lot more moving parts when you're not doing a venue.
So definitely get into the weeds of what your breaker box looks like. Make sure you find out what kind of lines are running under the backyard. That could put a big damper if you don't call DigSafe or one of the services to find out where the underground power line is. That's great advice there. So Ari, I got a question for you about backyard weddings. I think that there's definitely some implication that could be a more intimate, kind of small type of setting for the wedding. So think about the smaller weddings. Do small weddings still need a photographer?
Yes. 100%. My first answer for you is yes. So here in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we did about 54 events last year, and I would say more than half of them were backyard weddings. And so one of the things that I was doing a lot of planning with my photographers is that you're gonna be one of the few actual wedding vendors there because it is backyard. So a lot of people are trying to save money on that wedding planner side of things, or trying not to have a DJ because who needs a DJ to walk down the aisle? Well, you need music, you need microphones. So as the photographer, we're like giving the brides tips and tricks on like, hey, who's going to start getting people ushered down the aisle? Like you should have a DJ, or you should have someone like letting people know it's time for ceremony to start. So it really turns into your wedding photographer is trying to become a wedding planner, and it makes a lot of stress on our job. But the very least, having a photographer there to capture those important moments, helping you with a timeline, helping you with a shot list, because during the day, in backyard weddings, we've seen that It's just trying to make it as smooth and simple as possible, but it's actually making their day more stressful. So piggybacking off Tara, hire a planner. Piggybacking off of Jordan would be, yes, you do need a DJ. As a photographer, like, we network a lot with our team throughout the day. So your DJ is making sure that catering is ready to go, and your photographer is sitting down to eat really quick, and your DJ is looking at your photographer, hey, are you ready for dances? When it's backyard style and all of a sudden they have a karaoke machine and they just grab a microphone and they're going, and I don't have a camera on because I was eating, so I don't have lighting set. So we have that communication with our vendors because we're a complete team. We make the day complete by connecting with each other throughout the day. The planner knows what's going on, the DJ knows what's going on, the photographer and videographer are piggybacking off of each other. So even in the backyard setting, the answer is yes. I will touch on video really quick because we haven't talked a lot about it. Even if you're doing small backyard and there's fewer people, I would highly suggest having a videographer for this. You want people to be able to be a part of your day. And even if it's just the short highlight video of 7 to 10 minutes long and it captures on the emotion of the day, they at least get to be a part of it. So that's really important. Live streaming is another service that a lot of us offer, and it'll give you the opportunity to rewatch your wedding ceremony time and time again, but also have that video same day to be able to add with everyone. So photo and video backyards, I 100% say yes.
Okay, perfect. And once again, we are presented by Complete Weddings and Events, your leading provider of photo, video, DJ, photo booth, lighting, and coordination services. Make sure you come see us at completewedo.com. And Misty, let's talk about some of the mishaps that could possibly happen that Tara mentioned. What is your advice for couples on handling the mishaps that inevitably come up when you're in the middle of a wedding day?
Well, the biggest thing is you have to talk about them. You have to come up with a list of what they could be. Obviously, when you're working with a planner, they already know what they are. And even there's always ones that come up that we couldn't have even dreamed of until it happens, but you've handled so many other things that it's easy for you to handle that one as well. But if you're not going to have a planner, then you really need to sit down with, your close wedding party, parents, whoever's going to be there as your support, and figure out what could go wrong and how do you adjust and how do you take care of it. If you've got an outside caterer coming into a venue, what if they're late? What if there's weather? What if there's traffic? What if they don't bring enough food? Like, what are we going to do in these situations? I think people being late or a timeline not going the way that it should is the easiest fix, because you can kind of move things around in the day. You just have to be prepared that that's something that you're going to do. The big thing is to realize that nothing is going to go 100% as you had planned and envisioned, and there will inevitably be something that goes wrong. So having an idea of what that is, and then people that are going to address it when it does, is the best thing that you can do for yourself.
All right, so we're talking about strong emotions like stress and things of that nature. Libby, I'm going to throw it back to you, and I want to talk about another strong emotion that we're trying to avoid, and that's regret. What are some of the biggest regrets that couples can have after their wedding day, and how do you avoid them?
To generalize, the biggest regret is not hiring professionals. Drawing from personal experience of friends' weddings, as well as my professional experience here with Complete, the biggest things that come to mind, the number one is not getting a videographer, period, like at all. Obviously hire a very professional, credible company. But just in general, make sure you hire a videographer. It's the one chance that you have for both of your families and friends to be entirely together. That's probably not going to happen again. You want that on film. You want, little bits of the getting ready process with your bridesmaids, cheersy mimosas, because you have all of your girls with you. You want that moment of you walking down the aisle. You want that moment of your first dance, your father-daughter dance, your mother-son dance, those kinds of things to be able to look back on. Like Ari said, even if it's a 5 to 10 minute highlight, getting those moments to look back on, to watch over and over again, to have your kids be able to watch. Like, to be able to watch my parents' wedding is the coolest thing. Like, I wasn't there, but I can watch it and feel like I was there. I know Jordan does this in Central Illinois as well. One thing I bring up to my brides is there's the happy stuff. Like, we want to watch that over and over again. We want to laugh. We want to experience our wedding, but there's also the reality of the people that are at your wedding may not be here in 10 to 15 to 20 years. to be able to go back and watch that and have like you dancing with your dad, to have, you know, you maybe your mom making a speech at your wedding or something, to have that to have yourself and as well for your kids in the future, irreplaceable. You have to have a professional videographer, make room in the budget. One thing that one of my friends went through was she tried to hire a friend for a photographer, which the friend actually was a professional photographer, but the problem with that is you don't feel comfortable bossing around a friend a lot of the times. So hiring a friend or hiring somebody that's maybe not as professional, you end up with photos that you don't love and you feel uncomfortable voicing your opinion because they're your friend and you don't want to hurt their feelings. Or if it's just not a professional, they may not respond to you. They may say, well, you got your photos, that's what you paid for, and kind of bail on you after that. Just make sure you're hiring a professional photographer. Make sure you feel comfortable with your photographer voicing your opinion. You are paying them, you are paying for a service, you're paying for a product. So if you don't feel comfortable kind of interacting with them, that's a red flag. Other regrets, not getting a professional DJ. Through COVID, like everybody's talked about, we're seeing brides that are and grooms that are trying to find room for budget cuts. And I think that's one of the calls I get the most is, oh, we're just going to rent a sound system, we're going to make it work. No, in my opinion, no. I've gone to a wedding before where there was no DJ. And like Jordan mentioned, there's nobody there to announce your grand entrance. There's nobody there to announce your first dance, release the tables for dinner. So there's just this natural chaos that's happening where people are sitting around wondering, what's going to happen next? Who goes first to get food at the buffet? Like everyone's just wondering and curious the whole night, like what's going on. So having somebody there to control the order of the events is crucial, as well as being able to watch and see what music is working. A bunch of my couples will tell me like, oh, we've got a playlist made. It's great music. We've got 300 songs will be covered for the 4 hours. What happens if your guests don't like those songs? You're stuck with that playlist. So hiring a professional DJ that can kind of watch and see the genres that are working and not working and adjust accordingly is crucial. And then for me, I know it's an add-on, it's a maybe if it fits in the budget, but a photo booth for me is crucial. No matter how amazing your DJ is, there's gonna be people that don't like dancing. That's the order of numbers, you know what I mean? There's gonna be somebody. So having a photo booth, there is another form of entertainment, to me is really, really important. And then it also just captures a lot of the moments that maybe your photographer isn't getting, because like Ari said, if you're doing one photographer, they're focused on you, your wedding party, moments that you guys are experiencing. Let the photo booth kind of capture those candid fun moments of all of your friends and family that are at the wedding, so your photographer can focus on the professional ones that they need to get for you to frame later. And then planner, I know for me, a planner. I did not use a planner for my own wedding when I got married, and it's a big regret. The day of my wedding, I was putting up my own decorations. I was putting flowers in vases. I was setting up the place cards. I was walking down to the reception site to make sure that everything was done correctly. And I shouldn't have had to do that. I should have been with my bridesmaids, cheersing mimosas, having a good time. And I missed out on memories that I wish I could have back because I was doing that instead of hiring a planner.
Yeah, the other thing I've seen before is you'll end up putting the guy's side of the wedding party to work, and they're just not happy. And it's just an extra piece of stress that wasn't necessary. Yeah, that's some great advice there. Don't put yourself in a situation where you don't have professionals and you find out what you don't know about putting together a wedding. And hire the people that have been there, done that, and it's not our first rodeo. So Jordan, let's talk a little bit more about music. Libby mentioned a ton of different people, and I heard everything from kids to grandparents and wedding party in between. How do you put together music that's appropriate for that entire group?
Yeah, absolutely. So weddings are extremely diverse in the age ranges, and that's a lot of people for us as a DJ to please, and different those demographics. The teenage crowd or the 20-year-olds might not want to hear the same thing that grandma wants to hear. So as a DJ, I try to get this people pleasing going on from the beginning of the night. So even in your dinner and cocktail music, playing a good mix of some of that older music that might not be great for dinner for dancing later is a really good way to kind of please the older crowd. And we also like to go table to table during dinner and maybe take some requests, kind of fill out the room. I know my grandma is one of the most cool, hippest ladies you'll ever meet, and she'll love to get down to some Bruno Mars and a lot of newer music too. So they might surprise you, but definitely listening to your crowd, taking those requests for them is a huge deal. And then as a DJ, I always teach my staff, and as well as when I'm out in the field DJing, what we call like a roller coaster. So basically at the beginning of the night, if you've just eaten dinner, your guests are all kind of sitting back in their seat, and they're going to watch 2 or 3 slow songs from your first dance, your dances with parents. The energy is low. And it is our job as DJs to get that energy going up, 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 up. And then inevitably, no matter how good of a DJ you are, it's going to start to dip again. When it dips down here, that's where we as DJs will do something about it. And with Complete specifically, we'll do an icebreaker, something to interact with your crowd. Again, trying to be more than just that iPod, getting people engaged, getting them out to the dance floor. And when we get the roller coaster going back up again, a lot of times for me, that's a genre change, or that's a decade change. And so at the beginning of the night, it might be those 60s or 70s. And the next time up the roller coaster, it's the 80s, it's the 90s. And then around 9:30, 10 o'clock, the alcohol has maybe started to take effect, and your guests, they're really engaged in your dance floor. We've done a good job as a DJ getting people comfortable. So we're getting into the 90s and 2000s. And then by the end of the night, we're into more modern music. So kind of going through the decades as we go through that roller coaster, working in that crowd interaction, and also listening to your guests is definitely how I handle it and how our staff at Complete handles it.
So let's pry a little bit more on 2 specific songs. Do you normally pick songs for the bouquet and garter toss? As a couple pick them? How do you suggest going about that?
Yeah, definitely. So for bouquet and garter toss, there's always a few points in the night where, depending on the couple, they'll leave some things up to the DJ. They'll give them some liberties, especially if they're really comfortable with them. They have a good vibe for their DJ. Usually that's like the introduction song, a song for cake cutting, and then sometimes bouquet and garter. They'll give us a little bit of creative freedom there. If the couple is more type A and they want to pick out their music, that is totally fine. What I try to do, if they're letting me pick, is fit the theme. If it's a country crowd, country kind of themed wedding, then that bouquet garter toss, that cake cutting song is going to be, a country love song for the cake cutting, or a more kind of country themed bouquet garter toss. So we try to listen to them, personalize it to that. Some of my favorites, definitely for the garter toss, Pony by Genuine is great. I like My Love by Justin Timberlake is amazing. Kind of newer age, Bruno Mars, Versace on the Floor is great. So many good choices that you can make for that. A little bit more of a throwback. Sharp Dressed Man by ZZ Top is good for that garter toss. And then for the bouquet toss, Single Ladies still definitely gets a lot of plays because it was made for bouquet tosses, it seems like. But we do try to kind of mix it up. That's been used a ton. So some great picks for that could be Where Them Girls At by David Guetta. It could be Girls Just Want to Have Fun, if you're doing, again, a throwback by Cyndi Lauper. All kinds of choices for that. So talk to your DJ. They should have some good recommendations for you after listening to your theme and your vision for your music and for the night.
Yep, she was probably going to anyway, but Beyonce is 100% going to live forever because Single Ladies
Yes.
will be played during bouquet tosses from here till kingdom come. Misty, let's go back to you and talk about another fun extracurricular, Bachelorette Party, Bachelor Party. What are your suggestions for putting those together?
Well, the big thing we talk about first is, what are you asking your people to do before you get this huge, big idea and plan in your head? I want to go out of town. I want to go to Vegas, leave the country. I don't know, go to Mexico. Before you get any of those big ideas rolling, is that even something that your people can do and are willing to do? So survey your wedding party. Do they have a lot of weddings that they are participating in this year? Are they pretty financially strapped, because being a wedding party member is already an investment of your time and money? So is that something you can do before you get too excited? Once you've settled on your kind of dates and locations, I think it's always helpful to, have somebody else that has input. You shouldn't be, ideally some of your wedding parties planning this for you, but let's be real. I think these days, most of the time, the couples are the ones leading the charge, but make sure that you've kind of got a following. And then once you've got a location and you've got a time frame that you're going to do this in, then you really have to plan what you're going to be doing. Don't just say, oh, we're going to go to Vegas and we're just going to have a good time. Plan some stuff, because people, again, want to know what their financial investment is going to be. So where are you guys going out to dinner? Is it expensive, or is it a more casual place? What are they bringing? Just really thinking about the people that you're asking to participate in this with you, and taking into consideration what's going to work for them, and what they can even do. So that's the biggest piece of it. You can have fun anywhere. It can be a weekend, it can be a week, it can be an afternoon. You bring the fun, and making sure everybody is able to participate and be included is going to be more fun than not. So think about your people.
Perfect. Sorry, I got another good one for you. Engagement photos. Yes, no, maybe, and why?
Engagement photos. So this is one that a lot of brides try to cut a budget. They're like, I'm really awkward on camera, I'm just gonna do my wedding day. Coming from a photographer, that when you show up on your wedding day, you want to have a relationship. You want to be their friend. You want to be able to know when they're uncomfortable. You want to know how to make them comfortable. And so, yes, we do meet with you before your wedding regardless. We do sit down and do a timeline planning, a shot list planning. But the best way for us to see what works and what doesn't work is by doing an engagement session. And so even if you had a friend that was going to do it for free, or whatever that may be, hiring the same photographer that you have for your wedding day as your engagement photographer is pretty crucial. So to be able to be like, hey, do you remember the shot by the willow tree? And you just go into posing recognition, is what I call it. You get to very simply go back into that comfortable pose of the photo that you really loved. Or right after you get your photos back, you see them and you're like, ooh, yeah, this double chin and this lazy eye, like, can we never recreate this photo? And we never have to do that again. But if we didn't do that engagement session, your wedding day is your trial run. So now that lazy eye and that double chin is actually done on your wedding day, and we took time away from your guests to create that photo, when we could have already had an idea of what we liked and what we didn't like. Practicing dip kisses. I actually have clients that will send me pictures of them practicing their dip kiss all the time. As a photographer, it's one of my favorite things to do. Looking up those poses, having an idea of what would work for you really only works if you're going to actually do an engagement session, so that we can work on it together, as to like what's comfortable, what's not comfortable, knowing if you're a candid or if you need posed photos. Some people are like, I just can't do candid. I do this weird thing with my neck and I got a triple chin, where, if I'm posed and you're helping me, then I don't have that. So really, if you say you're not photogenic, you need an engagement session. Sometimes that just is their keyword of like, I don't need one. It's worth the money to do it with your actual person who's going to be your photographer on your wedding day.
Perfect. So we all know that the only way to get to Carnegie Hall is practice, and it sounds like the only way to get good wedding day pictures is with practice, and the engagement session is a perfect way to do that. So speaking of Carnegie Hall, Jordan, let's jump right back into music. Are there any 2021 music trends or just DJ trends that couples need to be aware of and think about?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a DJ, kind of going back to that earlier question of having such a diverse audience, you have to think about where the bulk of your audience is being introduced to music. And just a few years ago, that was definitely Spotify. People were jumping onto Spotify and they were hitting like the Hot 100, or even Billboard has their playlist imported into Spotify. So that's kind of how people were consuming music. In the year 2021, it is TikTok. And TikTok is our, kind of what's introducing people to the newest music and the hottest music and those kind of viral hits. So if you're looking for a really up-to-date playlist, a really up-to-date modern music, it's all of those viral hits that are on TikTok. And so as a DJ, my kind of cheat or way around it is to kind of keep up with the top 100 on TikTok, what people are using for their videos that have gone viral. And that keeps me really fresh and really up to date. There's too many to name as far as, kind of what's hot this year. But, doing that mix of the old throwbacks like we talked about earlier, and then some of those more modern for your younger dance floor later in the evening works great.
All right, so we got time for a couple more questions. So I'm going to throw a quick miscellaneous one at Misty here. Another thing to think about when you're putting a wedding together, it's traditional to put together a wedding registry. Is that something that's still a thing to do? And how do you recommend getting the registry put together? What's your registry 101?
I mean, it's definitely still a thing to do, but registries have kind of changed as far as what the focus is. You know, back in the day, people didn't generally live together before they got married. So your registry was really meant to set up a home for you. Well, so many couples are living together now, so you don't necessarily need dishes. I think it's really nice to include maybe some of the bigger things for your home that you might not buy for yourself, or you know, that are expensive. I always think about a KitchenAid mixer for all of us that like to bake. It's a pretty expensive item that you might not buy for yourself, but having that registry where people can kind of go in on things for you. You're not asking somebody to spend a few $100s. You know, find a registry where everybody can contribute $30, $40, $50 to something to get you what you'd like. One of the most popular ones these days is really honeymoon registries, which I think are super cool. People can pay for experiences for you to have on your honeymoon, whether it's an excursion or a tour, or they can help cover the cost of airfare and the resort. I'm less fond of really just paying for stuff. I like the idea of I'm paying for an experience, or I'm giving money towards something that I know that you're going to like or that you need. And then finally, a lot of us, again, we have homes that we've kind of established with our significant other already. So another one you'll see is really philanthropic registries. So giving money to a cause. So I definitely think that they are still necessary, but it could go either way. It really depends on your personality, but putting something out there, because people do like to give, and it is something they're expecting to do. So even if it's not giving to you, giving to something, giving to a cause. And that's just another way for you to showcase your personality throughout this whole wedding process, which is what the wedding is about anyway. It's about celebrating you two people as a couple and highlighting your personalities. So definitely still do a registry of some sort.
All right, Libby, one last question for you. When a couple gets engaged, what is the first thing you recommend they do?
Tell their friends and family. Then book your venue and date. I see it all the time when I work like wedding shows, even when brides call me. My first question to them is, what venue do you have reserved? What's your date? Without knowing that, for me, when I'm talking to you about our DJ, photography, videography, photo booth, coordination, and lighting services, I can't even tell you if we're still available. We might be booked on the date you ultimately pick. Based on if you're a prime Saturday, at least for us in the Midwest, is October or September, or if you're on like a Friday in January. I have different specials and different kind of swings I can do in pricing depending on your date. And then also knowing your venue. DJ setups at different venues, we need different equipment. Or like Ari referenced, if you're having a full Catholic mass, I'm going to suggest 2 photographers over 1 photographer, which is going to be a completely different price point. Knowing like your venue and your date, I think is going to be at least the least overwhelming way to tackle things. If you start calling around to all of your vendors, like, I'm just gathering quotes, the first question they're going to ask is, what is your date? What is your venue? And you're going to get overwhelmed immediately. Like, everyone I called asked that question and I don't know. So I always say, pick your date, pick your venue. That's going to kind of, I think, make it as least overwhelming as possible. And then, of course, like I mentioned with budgeting, sit down with your fiance or your family, whoever's helping to pay for everything, set a budget so you know what you're hoping to stick to for each service. So as you're calling around, you're gathering your quotes, you kind of know like, okay, they fit, they don't fit, they fit, they don't fit, and you can stay on track as much as possible. I think the Knot estimates, it's either the Knot or Wedding Wire estimates 80% of couples go over budget. So you're not alone if you go over budget, like you're normal, but at least have a general idea of where you want to be.
Good stuff. Another thing that I'll just throw out, set up the wedding website that you can either walk away from when the wedding happens, or you can parlay that into a family shared email, something to that effect. Not the website, the email, set both of them up, but set up a wedding email so that way you can hand that out and, help keep you and your fiance on the same page. So our last question is going to go back to our planning guru, Tara. We've been talking a lot about ways to try to avoid stress and stay calm. You know, weddings are supposed to be fun and fulfilling, not full of stress and conflict. So what is your advice that you give couples to avoid stress?
Well, the obvious one is going to be hire a planner. This does not have to be a full service planner to walk you through every step of your planning process if you feel like you have a good handle on that. But having somebody on the day to be your delegator, to be your family drama mediator, to the drunk groomsman who definitely doesn't need one more, and that liaison between all of your vendors, and really having that person to streamline your process and handle all the behind the scenes details so that you don't have to worry. Did your cake arrive? Is your DJ set up? Are your candles lit? Is the snack bar being refilled? Is someone going to show me how to cut my cake? Whatever those little things may be, having somebody to do it for you. And I know that a planner is not in everybody's budget. And so if you can't afford a professional coordinator, having somebody that can be your go-to person. And this is not a person in your wedding party. This is not your mom or dad or mother-in-law, father-in-law. This is somebody, maybe a distant aunt or cousin, maybe a friend who didn't make the bridesmaids list, but somebody that can be an outsider that doesn't have to be in pictures and doesn't have to be the person who's trying to conversate with all of the out-of-town guests. This is really just somebody that can be an outside voice and have a hopefully non-emotional opinion when one is needed. And really, the other thing that I say is have an emergency kit. As a wedding planner, we're going to bring that. I can't tell you how many times I have sewn a button on, provided Band-Aids, candy for the little girls to be bribed down the aisle. Again, if you can't afford a coordinator that's going to come with that kit, then prepare that for yourself ahead of time and have extra hairspray and bobby pins, and the list could go on what that emergency kit has, but have that on hand so that if anything does arise, you have those supplies available.
All right. Thank you very much. And thanks to the entire complete panel of experts for sharing some wedding planning knowledge. Make sure to visit us at completewedo.com. And to all our couples, happy National Wedding Planning Day.